Okay, everybody, let's get going. I'm going to do a little bit of talking here while I wait for the audio to kick in. Just make sure that my audio is good. Yeah, sometimes it gets sparked up and audio doesn't sound right. And let's see. Okay, yeah, it sounds good. Let me mute myself and all right. So, I think the last time we did this, I had talked about that I was going to go through and update all these readmes. I had done that, and so they've all been updated. Now, I've got to refresh all these pages because obviously I'm not going to be logged in. This is literally, I haven't touched it since I went through and pasted in all these updated readmes. So I'm just going to kill a few of these things and log back in. Make sure everything is refreshed. Okay, good. Add firewall. And let's edit. And we don't need to log into AWS just yet, so we won't worry about that one. All right. So boundary inspection. So this is where we were at. We had the subnet. We built that. That's working. We've got a firewall here, which is just a placeholder README currently. But I looked over at my notes. So let me throw these guys over here. These are the ones that I can't show, so I've got them on my other computer over here. All right, so basically, the one of the things that we're going to need is a bucket because we need a spot to potentially drop rules. Now, actually, let me kind of back up a little bit. So, with these firewalls, we have these rule groups that we're going to have to create in order to basically set the what's allowed through and what's not allowed through. And there's a bunch of different ways of handling this, but it mostly kind of comes back to what they call rules groups, which are just groups of different rules. And so traditionally, what you would do is you'd subscribe to. There's like a couple different things that you would do that all feed into these rules. One of them is a lot of times you can subscribe to open source threat intelligence organizations that will provide like rules. So actually, let me just do a little bit of Google foo here, and we'll see if we can find that like open source threat. Oh, let's do it. This Suricata rules. So yeah, so basically what we'd look for, and I'm not necessarily going to use these, but these are like some examples of what we might look at. This one, Suricata rules. Uh, okay. Uh, well, I don't know what this is, but it's not what I'm looking for. So while I'm talking, I'll keep looking. But basically, I'm going to find some free threat rules that are out there. Oh, this is a good one. I think I've actually used these before. So, like, basically, you'd look for these free rule sets that are out there, and a lot of times you're going to end with like a dot rules or something like that. And Suricata rules. Let's see, that one's empty. Let me see if I can find one. It's got some stuff in it. Okay, here's a good one. So what these Suricata rules are. So first of all, Suricata. Yeah, I keep finding out that there's things I need to explain before I explain the things I want to explain. So basically, Suricata is two things. Suricata is both a server, a like software, I guess, service that you can run. And a lot of times, what you do is you'll either mirror traffic and forward traffic to a server that's running Suricata, or there are a lot of like firewalls, like pfSense. You guys may or may not have heard us talk about using pfSense in some of our systems. pfSense can come with native firewall, and often with these open source firewalls, Suricata is kind of the engine that they use. And what it is Suricata looks at traffic and attempts to match every packet against the subset of rules that it has loaded. And those rules could be things like, alert on any traffic from this subnet to that subnet with port, TCP port, whatever. or drop something that matches the rule. But basically, you write these rules, and that's what we're kind of seeing here in front of you, which you probably can't read because the uh, these are really, really wordy rules. But basically, it's saying alert on IP, and then it gives this list of a whole bunch of different IP addresses, and says, any port from any of these IP addresses to our defined home net, any port, and then the message is ET active threat intelligence poor reputation IP group. So basically, they're saying all these IPs here are part of this uh, group of IPs that have a bad reputation. And so, they're not saying don't allow it through, but alert on it. And then it's got like this message here that tells you where that came from, what the reference was, blah, blah, blah. And then you have like a SID, which is sort of like a reference number for which rule it was, which reversion of that rule. Because rules, you can take a single rule and you can update it over time. This happens a lot. Like I think when I talked a little bit about the Ukrainian power grid attacks, there was a period where these systems were being attacked, and as you kind of go through and research the malicious traffic that you detected, you learn more about it and you kind of scope into what precisely the attack is, and so you can start limiting because your rules, you don't want them to be super broad. You want them to be incredibly specific. Only block the thing that I want you to block, basically. Um, and Anyway, that's basically what this rule is. So anyway, that's how the Suricata server works. Is when you play IP traffic at it, it bounces against these rules, and these rules alert, drop, whatever. There's a bunch of different things it can do. But that's there are two parts to Suricata. There is the software, and then there is the Suricata rules themselves, which Suricata also defines this format of rules, which is the other side of it that's really important because uh, you will often run into things like the AWS firewall, for instance, which may or may not be running Suricata in the background. I don't know, but this alert format, this way of describing traffic that you want to take some action against, this is very, very common, very typical. So when you are setting up a boundary for an environment, there's a couple things that you want to do. First, you might subscribe to just a straight up list of rules like what we're looking at here with this emergingthreats.net, and you just grab these rules and you load your firewall with these, which whatever subset of these rules makes sense to you, and you just update them whenever the threat intelligence comes through that tells you that this rule's been updated or whatever. So that's one way. The other way you can do it is you actually subscribe to threat intelligence sources. And a lot of times you have to pay money for these, but there's also quite a few. Uh, there's also quite a few. And by the way, my phone is active because I'm waiting on a couple specific calls. But Anyway, uh, so yes, the uh, when you're setting this up, you might have to subscribe to, or you often would subscribe to these threat intelligence sources because you're going to have to create your own rules. You're going to have to craft your own rules based off of your threat profile. And a lot of times this is where you would belong to an ISAC or an ISAL, some of those organizations that are like a collective of, like auto manufacturers or government and municipalities or energy. There's an energy ISAC. So there's all these different organizations where they uh, basically work together to forward threat intelligence back and forth to each other. So that, like, say for instance, Valero starts experiencing an influx of uh, spear phishing emails, and so does New Star, and so does I don't know Conoco or something like that. Well, hey, maybe someone is specifically targeting the energy sector, and so the energy folks need to be aware of the fact that this is going on. So, everyone can now look to see, hey, are they seeing the same thing in their networks? And if they are, then they declare an incident and they start working together to create these Suricata rules that describe the threat so that everyone can implement them and shut that threat off from their network at the same time. That's kind of that's a gross oversimplification, but that's the general idea of how this would work. So when it comes to our firewalls, we're probably going to be looking at doing the same thing. We're going to need to have some lists of rules that uh, we know we want to get rid of, like I don't know, what's this one? Miscellaneous attack. Okay, yes, we want to kill this miscellaneous attack. It's one of the worst kind. I'm kidding, of course, but anyway, so oh, spam house. Okay, yeah. So basically, we might want to just say, hey, we're seeing a lot of attacks from spam house. There are rules out here right now for blocking spam house. Let's just go ahead and implement that subset of rules. And someone out there is maintaining these rules and updating them with some level of frequencies. Like, see, this one was generated literally yesterday. So this is less than 24 hours old. Uh, Actually, just over 24 hours old because it was 0500 Eastern Daylight Time. So anyway, that's that's that. So, part of setting up the firewall in AWS is that we're probably going to need to maintain some subset of those rules. S3 is probably where we're going to end up doing that at. And frankly, I just decided we are going to need an S3 bucket because that's the way I did it this last time I worked on it. So let's go ahead and create that S3 bucket. Okay. And then we're going to need a grunt.hcl. All right. And as you guys know, I like to cheat where possible. And now I happen to know that there is an S3 module out there. So let's look for Terraform module. And look at there. So the very first thing we're going to do is we are going to update our reference. And I don't think I've done this on stream before, but we need to actually add this module. So let me walk through how we do that. So, all of our modules are tracked down here. This is going to be an S3 bucket, so that's going to be above the security module. So I'm just going to copy that. And S3 bucket module. And let's make it even. Okay. And then what we do is the source over here. This is what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the Terraform through AWS. Just like that. And the version is 4.2.2. Now, why am I updating the version? Besides the fact that it wouldn't work, we could put version equals latest. Why don't we do that? So the reason I don't do that is just over the years I have found that it is really common for, especially in the case of these Terraform modules, they will get updated pretty frequently, and not everyone does a great job of warning you about things that they're going to what's the word I'm looking for? Oh shoot, there's a specific word for something that is being taken out, and I'm drawing a complete blank. It's not decommission. Anyway, I'll think of it later when it doesn't matter. Anyway, there is when people are going to get rid of some functionality or change the way uh, that something works, they tend to, typically you would warn people ahead of time that that is going away. With these Terraform modules, I've had a lot of cases where that didn't happen. There was no warning, it just ceased to exist. And frankly, when it comes to anything where you have an external dependency, you pretty much always, I mean, with very few exceptions, you almost always want to specify a specific version that works with whatever it is that you're doing. And once you are live and you're in that software life cycle has several periods in it. There's the development, the sustainment, the collecting of information or feedback, and then cycles back into development kind of thing, which becomes an update. So like sustainment, part of sustainment is periodically going through and updating the versions of everything and checking to see what works and doesn't work. I mean, you want to be as up to date as absolutely possible, but at the same time, you don't want automatic updates breaking your stuff. So that's why we tend to specify a version number. So anyway, so the S3 bucket module here has now been defined. So we're going to go update our thingamajigger. So it is module, module, module. Clean that up. Okay. So now S3 bucket module exists. I'm going to look, and there is no dependencies for this um, because we can do it whenever because it's just S3. So what all inputs do we need? Well, let's start by just looking over here at what normal usage looks like. And I can see a couple things that we were doing that I might go ahead and replicate here. But it looks like we've got to specify. I had a count over here. I don't think I need to specify that. Or region. It should all be default. Bucket name we'll definitely need to specify, and whether we want to block public access, which we're definitely going to do that. Sorry, I got distracted. I was actually looking at my notes instead of this, but I think this generally is what we're going to do. Uh, sure. Yeah. Um, Actually, the only thing that we're replicating here is just bucket. So let's get rid of all this. So it's going to be bucket equals. Now this is the name of the bucket. So what we're going to do is it's going to be CS, what would we call this? Um, there we go. That's a very well thought out and intelligent name there. Okay, and then we're going to put the block public policy is equal to true, because we do not want just every Joe Schmo being able to pop in here. And honestly, I think that's the only thing I needed there. Yeah, let's go ahead and clean this up so it's pretty. Okay. And we'll check it in. All right. Okay. Sorry, I'm looking over at my notes here and there. Look at pipelines. You know what? I'm pretty confident it's going to run, so I'm going to go ahead and do an apply on it. And that apply is going to be, we'll just do boundary inspection. Just in case I need it again. Go apply it. And while we're doing that, let's get logged in here. Oh, that's right. Okie doke. So S3 here, you see we only have a few buckets here. We've got our CloudTrail bucket, our CalSoc state, and our CalSoc state dev state. This one's the one that's actively being used now. This one was one that was created early on while I was figuring it out. But in any case, once this pipeline runs, we should see another one get created that is called CS inspection bucket. And, okay. Yeah, so once we've got the bucket, the thing about that bucket is we'll be able to tailor access to that bucket. So in a real world scenario, if we had a group of folks that were maintaining this environment, we could potentially give someone permission to that bucket, and we could like write a script that pulls all the rules files from that bucket and loads them into, um, you know, the firewall as updated rules or whatever. So it's just a handy little thing. We may not end up using that bucket. Oh, and I didn't mention this earlier. The reason why that bucket may not be necessary is because you can also have like AWS managed firewall rules. And, at least for what we're doing right here, we may go ahead and just employ those managed firewall rules because it's easier. And you can also use like actually both. You can have something that uh, you can have like AWS managed rules, and you can have a separate rule group that is like the specific rules that we care about, that we want to manage separately. So maybe we have threat intelligence that's unique to our situation. Like, for instance, when I worked on a DoD contract years and years ago, we had uh, access to classified information about like targets that were trying to attack various systems, including ours. And we might know, hey, I don't know, such and such, German company is trying to gather and I don't know attack DoD systems or whatever. So we might say, hey, based on this information, we're going to create a specific Suricata alert against that particular entity, and that's what we do. Boom, ladies and gentlemen, we have an S3 bucket. All right, so that's there. All right, so what's next? Next thing I think I need to do is create rules. This is going to be a little bit more complicated because uh, our rules that was created in this other project was much more complicated. Um, I'm just doing some reading real quick because I got my notes over here that are talking about where these rules came from. Um, and how I created them. Okay, and it was dependent on the bucket, which I've got now. Here's the rules. Okay, so this was a rules group. Let me check and see if this module was a custom one. Firewall rules module. Or was this, this was a custom module. Okay. All right, how do I want to handle this then? Oh, all right. You know what? Let me do this. So it looks like we're gonna end up having to create a custom module for these rules. Um, so if I didn't already have something to cheat with, I might look here and I see policy. I happen to know that we're gonna need the policy, but that's going to depend on the rule here. So I'm going to look at this rule. Rule group, this is exactly what I need. And this says it's capacity of 100, name of it, rule group, source. Stateful inspection for denying access to a domain. Okay, this is handy. Basically says you are not allowed to do an HTTP target against this. It'll block it. Okay. All right. Actually, I think. Hmm. Rule source. Rule group. Rule source. I think this might be the better one. Hmm. So this is where it gets kind of, I guess, doing this kind of starts to become a little bit, I guess, based on experience. Um, because this is really hard to read. Honestly, I think if I hadn't have been doing some Terraform for a while, I probably might not understand what they're doing here. So they're saying for each one of these local IPs, they want to create a rule that allows HTTP traffic from that specific source. They're allowing it from there. So they're basically saying they're going to create content, action pass, and there's going to be basically two of these contents. There's going to be content, action pass, and then header. It's going to allow any destination, any port using HTTP protocol, any direction, any source port, as long as the source host, the source IP, is this IP address, and then they're going to do another one immediately afterwards saying in this IP address. That's that's how that works. Um, so if you were going to rewrite this, what you'd end up doing is duplicating that. You'd put a comma and then do it again, and you'd have one IP address and then the other IP address. Let's see if this one's probably a little bit easier to read and a little bit better for us. So we'll go ahead and use this. Okay. So this is the resource. This is what it's supposed to look like. Um, let's just go ahead and copy this whole thing for right now. So we're going to need a custom module. So let's go create that custom module. Now, what are we going to call this thing? Uh, network firewall. Yeah, you know what? We might just call it network firewall. And then policy would be, oh no, that's the policy. We want group, which I think is going to be the same. Yeah. Network firewall group. Yeah, that's what we'll call it. Uh, create group. All right. Okay. So main, we'll put that in there for now. You know, I like to make sure I cite my stuff. Okay. And remember, we want it to be this. Okay. And capacity 100. That's fine for now. All right. And let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go back and look at the rule group and looking at the argument reference here. Supports the following arguments. Here we go, attribute reference. So these are all the attributes that's going to output, as well as all those above, but we don't care about that at the moment. All right, so I'm going to go to outputs. Okay, so it's going to be ID, ARN, and update token. So, oh, so ID and ARN are the same thing. That's interesting. Okay. Hmm. Well, okay, so that one's already there. All right, so we've got that covered. So now, what I'm going to do is look at main, and this is going to end up being our name for our output. So we'll just replace all of it for right now. And I could use the trick that gets them all, but there's only a handful. So, and ID. Okay, so output's been updated. Now variables. What all do we need variables wise? So main, these are all the variables that I'm going to set, and actually that should be var.capacity. So let me just go copy those guys in there. Okay, 245. Oops. Okay, capacity. Name. Type. Or group. And tags, which is already there. Okay. So now what we need to do is go back and reference these guys uh, and get like what is capacity. So here we go. Oops. Okay, capacity. Got some new lines there that we didn't want. All right. Um, a description wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah, let's go ahead and add description to this. Wasn't in there, but something that I think we should have. And oh, this is good. I'll get to, well, actually, it already should, never mind. Dang it. I was going to show you how to make something optional, but there's already an example of that right here. But Oh well. By the time I'm done, you'll be able to see an example of what optional looks like versus not optional. Okay. Name. We'll group. We'll probably uh, not make this one optional. Tags, that one's already there. Type, that's what I'm looking for. And let me go back to main here and add description. Alrighty, variables. So capacity is going to be required. Because it's required, it's going to be string. And description is optional, and it is going to be a string. And its default is empty string. Name is required. It is a string. Type is required. It also is a string. Rule group is. Do we want to make this required? Yeah, I guess we could just leave it default. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it's a map of strings. Um, now, it's a map of maps or map of objects, really. I was afraid of this. Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna have to basically build all that out. All right. That's why I saved it. Object parents, and he goes straight into it. Okay. Map object. Okay. And then we see how they ended that. Just like that. Okay. All right. Actually, I've got a better idea for how to handle that. Main Okay. Actually, let me check something. Number. Okay. Okay. Keyword. And that one is optional, so that one's good too. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that feels pretty close, pretty good. So basically, what we're doing here is we're saying all these are variables that can come in. This capacity is going to be a number and it's required. The description is optional, which means it's got a default null value. Otherwise, it's a string. Name is required, and it's also going to be a string type. And then rule group, what we did is because this is a map of an object, which is really such a pain in the butt when it comes to dealing with some of these uh, Terraform modules. Objects can be such a pain. Anyway, it's an object that it basically got rule source and stateful rule, basically all these components in it. And what we'll do is when we create this variable in our Teragrunt, we'll replicate this. In actuality, what we're going to end up doing is copying and pasting from this right here. So, all right. So first of all, let's get these inputs and go up here to firewall group. So let's do inspection, firewall, folder, rules, group. Okay. Do a little bit of copy pasta here. And then take these guys, copy. All right. And then we will oh, actually, that's part of it, isn't it? Yeah. All right, this is the one we're replicating. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this all in for reference, just temporarily. All right, so capacity is going to be 100, which that's fine for now. By the way, what capacity is so these rule groups, once they're created, they can have just different numbers of rules added to them. Capacity is how many rules you can have. The issue that you're going to run into is with these rules. If you have too many of them, basically each rule, it takes a certain amount of time to process. So when you get a packet that comes in, the firewall has to walk through each of those rules and say, does it apply, does it apply, does it apply, does it apply? And if you match any of the rules, then it takes whatever action. In our case, we don't want to do too many rules because the more we have, the slower traffic goes through the boundary. Plus, right now, we're going to probably end up creating effectively two rules, one to allow everything through, and then one specifically to block a given IP address. And right now, I'm just going to use this 124 because it's easy, and we'll just test it. But eventually, the idea would be to have specific IP addresses that we're going to be blocking. So. Anyway, type is going to be stateful. Oh, you need to copy the whole string. And name. Okay. CS test rules. And then description. Okay, and then we're just going to go ahead and keep all this for right now. That's fine for the moment. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to add our create role group. You saw that, I think, last time. So we're going to call it uh, firewall create RG or something like that. So actually, we're going to get one of these because it's going to be let's call it FW create. There we go. Terraform, and then this will be network firewall slash rule group. Okay, get that. Module, module, module. See how easy it is to replace all this stuff and set it up when you kind of use a standardized format. That's why I love to copy paste. And the more I can copy and paste, that's also kind of just throwing this out there. That's one of the advantages of doing it this way. The more you can copy paste from one thing to the next, the more you know that you're following a standard that's going to make it easier to read in the long run. Because if you copied and pasted it and had to make some minor changes to create whatever it was you were about to create, then that just means that you're staying to that standard, whatever it is, and that's a win. The other thing is that you can also what's the word I was going to look for? You also have, shoot, brain fart. I forget what else I was going to say with that. Anyway, yeah, just try to keep to a standard. That'll make your stuff easier to read. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Also, if you have to make a lot of edits, that's kind of an indication you might be off track. If you have to make hardly any edits every time, then all this stuff was kind of engineered with the same mindset. So there really shouldn't be many changes between one module and another. If you get to the point where you're making a lot of changes on a given module, you might be doing it wrong. So it's kind of one of those warning signs. All right, so all that's good. Let's submit it. Now, and the way I did it for my other project is this set of rules here were all created from a really large file. So I actually had a separate Python script that would run, create all this stuff, load it into a variable, like a giant JSON variable that would get read in, and basically all this would be created through a Python script and then provided at runtime. It was a nightmare, and I'm trying to avoid that this time uh, because I'm not going to manage the rules through the uh, through automation, or at least not right now. I'm going to manually manage those rules just because, holy smokes, that's easier. And I'm getting pretty close to my time box. Let's see if this works. Something didn't work. Format, surprise, surprise. All right. So what this is telling me is that, oh, okay, got a call. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again later.
So more life when I kick raps. Bring that little bang.